how is image generation, video generation, like all the media generation technology helpful for an architecture studio today?
First of all, I don't work under the assumption that it's helpful. People have an opposite approach. People are saying, what are my problems? What are the things that I want to solve? And let's try to solve it with AI.
Mm-hmm. How did you even get into AI?
The way I got to working with AI is almost by mistake.
How much of an involvement does an architecture studio have through the construction of a building?
I mean, there's also a range in this, but I would say that generally the good architecture studios would be very engaged. There is the phase of construction oversight, site supervision, where you go to the site and you make sure that things are built like you designed it. Mm-hmm. But if you look at it really, really flat, the architecture kind of ends before you start building. Mm-hmm. You have to have...
It's only the design.
You basically, like when you get a permit, actually I don't know how it is in the US, but I'm assuming it's similar, that when you get a permit, then the building is legally built. Like if you want to make a change to your design or to your plan after you got the permit, you need to get permit for demolition. Mm-hmm. And then get permit again for constructing the new thing. So ideally, when you finish planning the building, everything just needs to be essentially assembled in the way that you've designed it. It's never like that. And there's also a lot of, so many different actors involved. Sometimes someone will come in and then they misunderstood your drawings, or they have a way of doing it. They use a certain technology that it comes out not exactly how you did it in the drawings. Mm-hmm. So the architect needs to be there and kind of make sure that everything is actually going according to the thing. And the other factor is, of course, everything unpredictable.
Yeah.
Sometimes they start drilling into the ground and
they found things that they didn't
and then
expect, yeah.
There's suddenly a rock that they didn't know it's there, and you cannot drill through it, and then you have to make quick adjustments so architects are very involved in that as well.
I see.
Yeah.
And did you study architecture?
So I studied architecture from 2014 to 2019.
Yeah.
That's my first architecture life. It's like a B.Arch degree. So that's the full education that you need to be licensed as an architect. I've worked for a year, and then I thought, okay, there has to be a little bit more to this profession than what I'm doing.
Was it boring? Like, was it something that it was just like not clicking for you?
I don't think that anything is boring, but I felt like there's so much more to explore in architecture than to just kind of deliver plans and designs based on whatever the client wants, just being some sort of a henchman. And I was working in an office that was relatively on the creative side, but still I felt like there has to be something else. And that's when I moved to Europe. I went to Denmark and I took a master's. I took a master's in computation in architecture. And I'm not really coming from, I'm coming from playing a lot of computer games and being interested in this, but I'm not a coder or a programmer. But I felt like from the different programs that were offered, computational architecture or computation in architecture is a field where there's a lot to explore. Like, I don't necessarily think it's better. I don't necessarily think that this is the way that everything should be based on algorithms and codes. I think arguably probably 99% of the world's best architecture was designed before computers.
Yeah.
Like there's a very weak argument to say that this is in any way better, but it is much less explored. Like there's a lot of, because I studied in Denmark, my master's, and there's a tradition of architecture in Denmark. There's Danish design that's very established. And when you go and do a master's, you can become an expert in this. But the master's is a lot about pursuing and developing expertise on existing knowledge. And going to computation in architecture, there's still so much to be explored.
And what does exactly mean going in computation? Is it about 3D rendering, or like making sure that you can plan out all the physics of a building before it's built so you minimize risk? Or what is it exactly, computation?
I think I heard it in a different conversation a while ago that computation and computer science is not about computers. It's about it's more like a philosophy that says that there are certain things that you can achieve with math. There is, a very clear limit of what you can do with math in your head. There's a lot of architects in the past that really pushed that limit, I would say, but that limit exists. And then computers were introduced, and suddenly you can do much more elaborate math. You can calculate, you can simulate things to a very high degree. And then computation in architecture is exploring that field of what could that mean if we utilize this new capacity to do math in a insane amount. How could this impact? What would be the possibilities? So using software is not that. A lot of architecture software is basically an extension of drawing with your hand. AutoCAD, Rhino is kind of an extension of my own hand. I'm still doing things, but I can do it more accurately. I can do it faster. But there's no computational thinking in just drawing things digitally. Computational thinking is about what is it that can be done in a computer that cannot be done otherwise. So a lot of it is around simulation. A lot of it actually goes into the world of digital fabrication. And digital fabrication is based on algorithms, is about creating that code that describes to the machine what it needs to follow in order to fabricate. And to plan for this, you need to understand computational thinking. Like, you need to take this into account in the design. You don't just think about how the thing is going to look like, but you think, what is the process in which the thing is made, it's not new. It's also when you're building with bricks, you need to understand the characteristics of a brick.
Yeah.
What can it do? And concrete does different things. In concrete, you need to pour it, so you need to create those templates, and those create limitations that are not like they expand beyond what is just the shape that I want for the building. There's so many different constraints. And then you bring in, digital fabrication and computational design, and you get a whole new set of things. Certain robots work in a certain way, and G codes are written in a certain way, and that impacts how the thing is then going to be constructed, and also how it's going to look like. And that area is very unexplored, or let's say underexplored.
That's so interesting, no? Because that's at the end of the day, a big way that you can innovate in the space, no? Or that you can make the process of building a building more efficient.
You could potentially make it more efficient. I think it has not proven to be more efficient.
Okay.
in certain cases, yes. A lot of the conversation in computational design is around this term optimization.
Yep.
And optimization is a mathematical concept. And when you have much more compute and you can calculate to a higher degree, then you can theoretically optimize. But we see a lot of examples of, for example, structures being optimized, things becoming thinner while they go up because they carry less weight in a way that is calculated. And then you can save some materials, and you can create certain expressions. But I don't know enough projects, but I feel like generally in architecture, there's not a collective agreement that computational design leads to better results.
I see.
And also, optimization is not necessarily the most important thing about architecture. Architecture has so many aspects that are not empirical. And the world today is much more economical. So if you cannot optimize price, for example, then things will just not be built.
Yeah.
So optimization is a baseline for a lot of the things that we do. But the value of architecture is not about it being optimized. And also for something can be optimized for today, but a building will hopefully stay for more than just one day. And then conditions change, and the definition of what is optimized is different. there is a lot of work in computational design around, for example, daylight. So you try to optimize daylight. And there is, in a computational philosophy, there is an answer to this. There is a formula that leads to the optimal orientation of the building for optimal sunlight. But then I'm sitting with you in the same office, and you're like, there's too much sun here. And I'm like, there's not enough sun here. And both of those things exist at the same time. And even though people can argue that according to the formula is optimized, it's just not how we experience the world. We don't experience the world through math and statistics. Like some people will walk in a street and they say, I don't feel safe. I don't feel safe in that street. So even if I come in and I say, listen, I have optimized the distance between the buildings and also the statistics show that there's no crime here. Mm-hmm. The fact that you don't feel safe, like it's not something that I can argue with math.
Yeah.
So there is a lot of room for innovation, but innovation is not necessarily or not automatically meaning that I will do things better. Mm-hmm. I'm exploring a space, and then I need to very honestly evaluate. Mm-hmm. I think it goes a lot into how we approach AI as well.
Yeah.
If you want to talk about AI today, we can.
Yeah, no, I was wondering if that was like the thing that made you got interested in AI, kind of like getting exposed. You probably got exposed to coding. You probably got exposed more to the technological aspects of architecture. Is like how did you even get into AI? So and doing like the PhD, because right now like the PhD that you're doing is focused on that. No, it's focused on how you can apply AI to architecture.
Yeah, so I'm doing what's called in Denmark an industrial PhD. Mm-hmm. So I'm employed at a company at Henning Larsen. It's a large architecture office from Denmark. But I'm also enrolled as a PhD student at the Royal Danish Academy, and it's kind of like a joint venture. And it's a nice thing because you get to get the good of both worlds of academia and practice, because you work with academic rigor that is not always part of practice. Mm-hmm. In practice, many times it's like, well, if it works, let's just do it. We don't really understand or care why. And there is not really the space to look into the depth of things unless there is some sort of return of investment. Where academia has all of this, but it sometimes lacks relevance. People are really like investing a lot of time to understanding things in depth, and then people from practice are like, but we don't need this. Yeah, like this is not really making any impact on the real world. So industrial PhD aims to be the good of both sides. Mm-hmm. The way I got to it is actually, the way I got to working with AI is almost by mistake, because I went to Henning Larsen and I proposed to do a PhD on regenerative urban design, which is another concept that we can talk about maybe another time. But regenerative urban design is a very holistic approach to urban design that requires a very deep understanding of a lot of different aspects of the site. So this idea of optimization with regenerative design, it's about systems thinking. Mm-hmm. It's about understanding that I cannot just say this street will be better if there is more shade, because the shade means planting the trees, and then the roots might impact the underground infrastructure, and they might have an impact on biodiversity because the local insects, they don't get anything from this specific tree. So even if there is more shade, I cannot just look at it and and one thing that is very different today than what it was even 10 years ago, but definitely 20 or 30 years ago, is that we have much more data. Mm-hmm. Like data is being collected exponentially more and more. And our ability to understand a site also expands in a similar way. From the perspective of data, like I mentioned before, that there's a lot of things to understand about a site that are not data. Like this idea of someone, if everyone in the neighborhood says, I don't feel safe, the data says otherwise, I cannot just ignore. Yeah. Even if the data is pointing out clearly, because we're not just a purely data-driven practice. We're not like pharmaceuticals, that you need to get. If under 5% of side effects, then I make that decision, period. Because the data is kind of guiding the architecture is broader than this. Anyway, I came to Henning Larsen with this idea of working on regenerative design. And then our director of innovation, Jakob, was like, you did a master's on computation. This was roughly 2 years ago. So he said, you did a master's in computation. What do you know about AI? Do you have any background on AI? Because this AI thing is happening, and we at the office, but also generally in the field, we don't really know. We don't really know how this applies. We're a little bit left behind. Would you like to maybe divert a little bit your research proposals to include AI? And I was this close to losing my visa at that point. So I was like, yeah, of course. I mean, 100%.
Yeah.
Like AI, I was planning to do AI anyway. So I had to rewrite my entire proposal in like 2 weeks. And it ended up being about investigating how AI could be utilized, like what would be the right framework to use AI within site analysis for urban design. This is my research framing. What happens when you do a PhD is that a lot of the topics that kind of make up your research, you need to get quite knowledgeable.
Yeah.
Like in order to build up another layer of knowledge on top of all of these topics, you have to understand them to a pretty high degree. So I really got into AI. And again, I'm not a machine learning engineer. And I don't fully understand the math behind training, but I really went into let's say, the foundations of what does it mean? Well, what is the philosophy of machine learning, and how does it differ from algorithmic thinking and computing? And you have to understand those things to make any statement about what it could mean for anything. And this is sliding to a lot of different areas within the office. One of them is regenerative design and site analysis. One of them is, of course, the capacity of AI for visualization, for creating images. Some of it is around, let's say, data analysis and making data more accessible. One of the gaps that I've identified as part of my PhD, and I mean, I didn't make this up, and I'm not the first one to notice this, but we work with a lot of data, and we talk to clients and collaborators about data. We say, yeah, we're data-driven this, data-driven that, which we are in some ways, but there's not a single person working. Maybe there's very, very few in architecture that is trained on data, that is a data scientist or a data analyst. Very, very few. Compared to almost any other sector that works with data. They have a whole department of people who know what is data, how to clean data, how to structure data, how to visualize data, how to draw insights and analyze. We don't have that in-house capacity. And it's by no means like this is not part of our training. We don't have any class on this. I did 7 years of education. But we are expected to do this because a lot of the decisions that we're making, they have a lot of impact. And when we go to municipality, when we go to a developer, and we say, we would like to do this, they say, well, this costs 50 times more than that. What are you basing this on? Show me that you are based on data.
Yeah.
So we are the market is kind of pushing us to be more data driven. But we don't have the in-house capacity to analyze data to that degree. And also, together with what I said before, we have exponentially more available data. And that's where I'm thinking that AI could be a really interesting thing to explore, because it does have the capacity to not just analyze data, but also to bring the insights in a way that is very accessible.
And what is the kind of data that architecture studios like Henning Larsen may have?
Well, if you're working on urban scale, biodiversity data, traffic data, soil data about soil types.
And do they get it themselves?
So that is really depending. There's some projects where the client has actually done a lot of research and they bring you this package. Here's a bunch of data.
Yeah.
Please base your decisions on this. Sometimes there's absolutely nothing. And then there's also different ways to approach it.
Mm-hmm.
We do collaborate with a lot of experts. Like, for example, projects that have a big impact on nature, we would work with ecologists, biologists, and they would go and survey the site and collect that data for the project. So there's actually these two directions of, because AI can help me analyze data that I have, but it can also help me collect data. And both of those things, it does to a degree with different kind of weird limitations. And that's my PhD, is understanding what is the right framework to work with AI. I mean, the amount of data that you can get on urban projects, demographic data, historical data, so much. And it's coming from different sources. It's coming in different formats. It's structured differently. It has different levels of validity. Like, one could be a survey that was done in 2005. And one could be a really, really thorough, like 50 different experts were doing so the degree of validity of the data. And then I also need to decide how much does this data impact whatever decision I'm making. And there's not so much supervision on this. Like architecture, one of the structural problems that we have is that we don't have embedded accountability. So if I come in and I say, according to the data, if I want to preserve biodiversity in the site, then I need to plant these trees. And everyone accepts this because I say this is according to the data. 20 years later, all the insects die. I'm not held accountable.
Yeah.
You know, if I'm, as an architect, people say, the municipality says, I want this neighborhood to feel more safe. So I say, okay, I've done this research, I've collected all this data, I made these decisions, you do it. After 30 years, people still feel unsafe. I'm not accountable for this. Nobody can, like, there's no one in the office who's even worked on this project. That is, if the office still exists. The time frames that we work with and the overall structure doesn't give us any degree of accountability for the decisions, but we're still expected to do it.
Yeah, no, I guess that it creates more trust. It's almost like a lawyer. That's one of the things that is like the funniest to me from a lawyer, that they charge you so much.
Yeah.
And sure, they would advise you, but at the end of the day, they're not held accountable for.
No, they don't go to prison if they lose the trial. Yeah.
Exactly. No, that's fun. And so I assume that through that study and that need for processing data and understanding data, there's quite a lot of LLMs that you've been integrating into Henning Larsen. And I'm also curious about the visual domain, which is like the one that I know that you've also been exploring a lot. And where you did a great presentation yesterday talking a lot about that. And I feel like it has more of a human touch. No, I feel like you were something that you mentioned that I really liked is like how integrating image generation technology into Henning Larsen culturally changed the organization. So I guess that like the first question around that, it's like how is image generation, video generation, like all the media generation technology helpful for an architecture studio today?
Well, I'm going to answer in different layers.
Yeah, sure.
First of all, I don't work under the assumption that it's helpful. I'm working, this is a nice thing, like as a PhD, I'm not an advocate for any technology. I'm exploring and I'm trying to come in with like a neutral approach to explore and then honestly evaluate. And there's something about, AI in general and image generation, all of those things. It's not architecture technology. It's agnostic technology. It's math. It's math and computer science is creating calculations to produce numbers that produce pixels. But like, it's not someone that says, okay, this is an architecture problem. Let's develop a technology that does this. So this idea of what is the usefulness or potential usefulness of all of AI, but also image generation for architecture is an open question. I'm not coming with the assumption that this is going to help me. And it's something that is really dependent, on my opinion, on having an understanding of what are the properties of this technology and then matching it to the right problems. What we are seeing a lot, at least from the early adoption of AI into architecture, and I think it's still quite prominent, is that people have an opposite approach. People are saying, what are my problems? What are the things that I want to solve? And let's try to solve it with AI. And this, to me, is a little bit like, let's say you live in a kitchen and you eat soup every day. And then someone comes in and says, I have this new thing. It's called a fork. And then you say, okay, let's see how I can eat my soup with the fork. And then you try to eat and you're like, I'm not getting a lot of soup in my mouth. Probably the fork is just not there yet. Or maybe I haven't done enough courses on how to properly use the fork. Like, this is the assumption that a lot of architects have.
Right.
You would speak to architects and say, it's good, but it's not there yet.
Yeah.
Or like, maybe I'm not good at prompting, and my perspective is like, no, you need to first understand the properties of the fork and then look around the kitchen. And maybe you find out, I also have spaghetti. I never even thought about eating spaghetti because my spoon was useless for this. But maybe I can actually expand a little bit what I want to do based on understanding what is this new tool that I have. And what we find out in architecture is that most of the things that we do in the way that we've been doing them, and to a large degree, we've been doing architecture almost the same for thousands of years. AI is just not the right fit. Architecture is a very intentional profession. Whenever there is something somewhere, it's because we put it there. We come in with a very clear design intent. And we also, if talking specifically about the world of image generation, architecture is not a profession of producing images of buildings. There is so many like underlying layers of architecture that they will end up having kind of a visual, presence. Like, you can show it in a picture, but there's so much that is not in the picture. There is the materials, there is the construction technologies, there is the cultural context, there is the cost, there is the way the people will flow in the space, there is the adjacent buildings that are not in the picture, there is what used to be there before, and there is what is the demographic, and there's what is the soil and groundwater, and all of those things, they don't exist in an image. But in our process, we reach the phase of the image after all of those things have been considered. And then AI image generation comes in and says, we can start with a picture. So most of architecture, they look at this and they say, not good for me, because I don't have a way of intentionally bringing all of those things into the picture. And this, I think, again, maybe some architects are going to watch this and be like, I disagree. But what I experience, and from what and I experience quite a lot, and I spend a lot of time, exploring this and talking to a lot of people. This is the general feeling. AI is not really helping me because I am trying to do what I've been doing, which is being very, very intentional and very systematic and very accurate. People talk about accuracy, and also very consistent. And AI is not giving me this, hence not good. The thing that I think is worth exploring and I find interesting, and again, I'm not coming from an assumption that this is good, is like, but what if we do start with a picture? What could be the value of this? Not in the traditional process, but maybe we can start exploring different processes. Or we can see the value of this in things that are not just about building design. And one of the things I mentioned, I think the main thing I mentioned in the presentation, is about communication. And this is something that is not so visible outside of the field, but so much of an architecture project is about communication. It's about communicating inside the team. It's about communicating with clients. It's about communicating with collaborators, with different stakeholders. And communication is especially interesting in architecture because we use terminology that is not empirical and is not understood in the same way. I'm not just talking about a building of whether it's square or circular, or if it's blue or green, but I'm talking about whether a building is local, if a space feels open, if like all of these very cryptic terms that we're using, we need to use them before there is a building. Like, I'm not like a sculptor when I'm making a sculpture and then I say, look at the sculpture. Do you want it? Buy it. You don't want it? Buy something else. I sell you the building before there's a building. And my job is to communicate that building to you. It's so much of our job. I would say it's most of our job is to communicate. Even construction drawings are graphic design. They are a graphic way to communicate how something is going to be built. And there is a range of how much we actually need the kind of precision and consistency of manual production in the whole spectrum of communication that we have. So when I'm making construction drawings, I don't have tolerance for this to actually come up with something that I didn't think about. This is going to be built, and if it goes to the construction site and they look at it and like, what is this? This actually cannot be built.
Yeah,
I don't have that tolerance. But when I'm talking to a client about a space that feels open, or a park that has certain kind of spatial qualities and atmosphere, I'm very limited with my language.
yeah,
And we have some, tradition of doing some drawings, and the drawings are always very implied. And we are also quite comfortable with drawing something that could be interpreted in different ways, because we also sometimes don't want the client to be fixated on something that might be a little bit too precise. And then we end up kind of bound to that thing that was mentioned early on. But the things that we're seeing when we're communicating throughout the project using AI image generation is transformative. Sometimes it's very kind of, simple and dry in just how it saves time. Something that we just need to visualize in a certain way, and we can just skip the production of it. And this is where we're starting to develop a little bit more tolerance for the inconsistency of AI. Because when you're going to make a visualization of a building that's going to be on your website and is going to be hanging on the scaffolding while the construction is taking place, if there is something that just kind of popped up because I used AI and I didn't intend for it to be there, is not good for me. But if I'm just having a conversation with the client and I say, well, I'm thinking something like that instead of something like that, and the client says, yes, I agree, I understand, this is something that could be months. And there's so many misunderstandings in that process. So conveying thoughts visually transforms the way we communicate with clients. Another thing is the ability to, instead of thinking about it as just kind of skipping the production into the product, we're starting to think about it like getting glimpses into a potential future. So let's say we have a very underdeveloped project and there's a very rough model and a little bit of context. We will, no matter what, need to model and design and plan every single aspect of the thing. But the directions we could take could be very different. And again, traditionally, what we do is we develop those different scenarios to the degree that we can look at them and discuss and evaluate. But now, what we're seeing is that, and also traditionally, this goes to the juniors and the interns.
And were these like 3D renders before? Or
it's either 3D renders or looking at the 3D model that is a little bit more detailed.
Yeah.
And usually you would have design directors that they would kind of delegate to the interns, make all these things for me. But this is a very long process and it's very limited. I think it's also good that it is manual. Like the way that you get to know your project by doing it is something that has a lot of value that I don't think should be skipped anyway.
Mhm.
But now we're seeing design directors just producing a lot of different
Right.
scenarios, looking at this could potentially look like this or like this. Not exactly this, not exactly the placement of the window, of the connection of the, like, I'm fine. That is not getting to that resolution of accuracy now, but I'm seeing potential ways in which this can go.
Mhm.
And then I choose the relevant one and I model towards it and I build towards it. This is another aspect of culture. I'll get to the cultural part after this. But we had this project where we did this pilot with Krea, and we said we're going to try and produce everything with Krea, but also use it as much as we can along the process. And it was a competition, and there was we did this follow-up conversation, like how was it for you? And there was a junior, Tina, that she said, this has been the best project for me ever because I got to be involved in so many conversations that are actually about the essence and about the planning and design decisions. And usually the juniors are not even in those conversations because they don't want to interrupt while they're doing production. But this whole producing different scenarios and exploring different possibilities became so immediate and to such a good degree that suddenly other people found that they can participate in the more essential conversations. Then, I mean, of course, removing a lot of the time of production of visuals at the end. And one really, really interesting thing is how AI is slowly opening up video for us. Because architecture doesn't exist in like a frozen state. It exists in time, in landscape, especially, urbanism especially. But we are traditionally making static images that show a specific state of the, and it's an image. So it's like, it's not even the thing. It's an image of, it's a representation of the thing. There is no render that is what the actual building is. It's anyway not that accurate. But the fact that it's static is very misleading. And the reason you're not seeing a lot of videos, or if you're seeing videos, is those very kind of digital looking fly-throughs, is not because all of the heads of all the architecture offices in the world came together and said, we decided that, culturally, we don't want to produce videos because it's not good. We're not doing it because we don't know how, and because it's very expensive if you want to take it outside. And the videos that we are used to see in architecture, these fly-throughs, they look like this because this is what the technology allows. Because this is what you can do easily with Enscape and Lumion. So that's why it looks like this. It's not an intentional decision of like, this is the best way to show the project. But what AI with video allows is like, we can actually show the dimension of time. We can show how things exist in a reality that is not frozen. So either it could be just an image, and especially I think around landscape, a static image of a park, or an image of a park where the plants are moving a little bit and the clouds are moving, is a completely different understanding of what is the atmosphere that I'm trying to create. So that my ability to communicate with video, I think this is going to be so standard because it makes so much more sense. Or how things change over time from night to day, from, autumn to summer. This is about finding the spaghetti.
This is about like
this is like AI
0 to
can
1.
do this. Maybe I can open up to doing things that I didn't think about. But going back to the culture, there is something very wild about AI, which I think a lot of the quality of AI is this is an inherent property of the technology. And when you can amplify this, I think it's fascinating. There is not a lot of this in architectural work. Even you take a project of 3 years, the amount of time from those 3 years of full-time work on the project, the amount of time that you're spending on creative exploration is, I don't know, a week. and then you produce the thing,
Yeah.
and you go back and forth and whatever. And that week is what this is people's passion. Like this is what they like to do. They like to design, and they get to do so little of it, like compared to what they thought they would in school. And a lot of them see AI coming in, and they're like, "You're going to take away the one thing that I enjoy in my job. I'm going to delegate this to AI."
Also, there was like a little bit of pushback at the
There's a
beginning.
lot of pushback. There's still a lot of pushback.
Interesting.
Henning Larsen, maybe not as much at other places, but there's also pushback on LLMs, and there's pushback on everything AI for architects who are very intentional, also very pretentious, also very kind of God complex, and something comes in that they don't understand and they can't control. You know what? I'm not going to say they. We. I'm also an architect. I'm not superior to anyone, but there is an automatic pushback of like, I don't want this. I don't need this. I'm doing things in the way that I know, and something that kind of does things behind a curtain and comes back to me with like, why would I want this?
Yeah.
What happened when we introduced AI visualization and specifically Krea into the office is that it shifted the conversation a little bit, because I think that Krea is really hitting the right spot between the thing does what I want it to do. I have just enough control, but I'm also utilizing the qualities of the technology, and also in an interface that is not intimidating. I think that there's, again, maybe controversial, maybe some people will say that I'm wrong, but I think most people will agree that, let's say, the node workflows for half of the industry, and I'm being generous, I think it's way more than half, but let's say half, this is a barrier. They see this, they think, not for me.
Yeah.
I'm just not going to use it, even though this is a higher degree of control. But there's something about it that is just like, it feels like, no, I don't know how to do those things, so I don't want it. And then there's the other side, where all you have is just write a prompt, get an image. Then it's like, this feels too random. I don't want it. And we have, I mentioned this also in the presentation, like the way we approached AI was, instead of having like an AI think tank, I know some people have like the AI specialist team or the AI lab or the AI this, and they come up with some ideas of what would be the optimal use of AI, and they go to the office and say, from now on we do this. Or it's coming from management. They say, we have just signed an agreement with Adobe, so now everybody should be using Firefly. Firefly is okay, but we approached it in a way that we said, we don't know what is good. This is not an architecture tool. It's not an architecture technology. So not only we don't know what is good, we also don't know what is a good way to use it. And the only way that we can know is by including everyone in that conversation. So we let everyone in the office use essentially whatever tool they want for image generation. And we reimburse them. So we said we're gonna invest money in everyone being part of that exploration. And after 1 month of usage, fill out this feedback form and let us know, was this tool good for you? Was it useful? What did you use it for? Blah, blah, blah. Overwhelming results, like everyone who used Krea was like, this is good. And people used Comfy UI. People used Leonardo. And people used Automatic 1111. And people used a lot of those different, and people used Firefly. But Krea was just in the right spot. And this was not just people who do renders. And that was the I would say, the more interesting thing. That we got people from business development saying, this is useful for me because I'm making this kind of quick little things, or people from communication, people from landscape, from urbanism, from everyone was like, I can see how that's useful. And I feel good using it. I don't feel that the tool is using me. I don't feel like I'm just kind of throwing something into some sort of magical pot and then something comes out. So this is the reason we decided to work with Krea as the platform for those things. But we've been using AI before, and AI has been around. but no one was really using it, or at least it was not in the conversation. And people who were using AI were a little bit like hiding their screen.
Yeah.
People were saying, I did this, I did that, and they wouldn't say I used AI, even if they did, because it was a little like, especially in architecture.
Yeah.
But once we introduced Krea, we started seeing a shift in how people talk about AI. I would say when we started using Krea across the office, more people started using Notebook LM. More people started using Claude. More people started using Perplexity because they've had this experience of I have used AI, but I feel like I own it. I feel like I get it.
Yeah.
This comes together with how we do training at Henning Larsen. We don't train for tools. We don't teach people how to use tools. We don't teach people how to prompt. I think personally, and I'm in charge of a lot of this training, I think teaching tools is a bit redundant. The biggest example for me is how people got so good at Comfy UI for architecture, like getting stacking, control nets and LoRa's to da-da-da-da-da. And they got like a small differentiation because they managed to do all those things with AI that were not possible with Midjourney. And then Nano Banana came out, and all of this knowledge is just down the drain.
Yeah.
You just don't need this anymore because I can just put an image and say, keep this image as it is. And people got so good at prompting for Midjourney, the whole kind of comma separated. They're like, let me give you a 3-hour course for $1,000 where I teach you how to write 8K resolution realistic at the end and describe the sunlight. So all of these skills of how to use tools, I don't really believe in this. And also, those things, they don't come with a manual. And by not teaching people, you will discover new ways of using those tools. And I feel like with AI, there's almost an intimate relationship that you get with the tool, that everybody is using it differently in a way that works for them. And that's great. I don't want to teach people how to use it. What we're teaching people is what is machine learning? What is the difference between communicating with a computer in a deterministic way, in an algorithmic way, that whatever I put in, if I do it 1,000 times, I'm going to get the same thing because it's math. I always use the example of like ChatGPT, Claude, Notebook LM. They always come with this little note at the bottom. By the way, can make mistakes. By the way, can be wrong. And they do this because it's a product. So they kind of acknowledge that this is a downside of this. It's not a downside of the technology. It's an inherent property of the technology. That's why it's always going to be there. But if you buy a Casio calculator from 1950, it doesn't come with a label that says, by the way, calculator can be wrong. By the way, double check. It doesn't have that because it's a fundamentally different way of approaching computation. So we teach this. And when people understand this, then they go to AI with like, okay, this is not some unknown wild beast. I kind of get why it is the way it is. Let's try to work with it. Let's see what it's strong at and utilize it to our benefit. So I would say generally the question of like, what do you use it for? What is it good for? I don't know. I'm still finding out. And that's also, one of the, I'm going to compliment you a little bit now, but it's why we really like to work with Krea, because we feel that the people at Krea are also curious to find out, really curious to find out what it's good for and how and why, and not just like how is this a money-making machine. It's nice. It's nice. If it's going to make us a lot of money, it's great. Everybody benefits, maybe except the environment. But it's this kind of curiosity around innovation that is very much our approach at Henning Larsen. And we feel that this is also it's the same way. At Krea.
It's like such a nice way of closing. I feel like we at Krea, like we're also like going around with the fork.
Yeah.
Like we're going like trying to like opening like drawers in the kitchen.
Yeah.
Trying to like to see what we can do with the fork. Because at the end of the day, like that's the reality, you know, like I think that there's like a lot of people that they try to make others think that they know the future, or that they know like how this technology is going to impact different industries, or how this technology is going to like change the way that people create. And I think that at the end of the day, like I've been so surprised so many times by how people have been using this technology in like ways that I would have never imagined that it would be useful. And I think that in architecture, it's been like kind of similar. No, like I would think that the enhancer, for example, would be like one of the main ways that architects would like enjoy using Krea. No, like 3D rendering is like very like it takes so long time to make like high quality renders, and we have an enhancer that can do like it can like get a very basic render, and it can like take it to 4K or like even like to 27K if you have enough credits. That's great, but at the end of the day, like what we're seeing with like folks like y'all is that it can go beyond. It can there's like certain like specific processes, like getting this technical map and turning the technical map into a visualization that a client can understand. Like all these like concepts around communication that they were unknown for us. That's I feel like that's like the spaghetti that we are finding in architecture, and like that's great. I feel like this has been like such a like symbiotic relationship for both of us.
I think we're also expanding a little bit our. There's many things where we architects really want, you know, consistency and accuracy and stuff. And I think a lot of it is because this was the only way. Like this is just the only way that we know how to do things. So we developed this framework where we think things have to be this way.
Yeah.
And we are slowly discovering that there's actually so much that we do. Maybe we don't need it to be so hands-on. Maybe we don't need it to be so intentional. Maybe there is a higher tolerance than we've expected, just because this was just the only way to do things. To manually kind of to model something from scratch, and then every element you put it there and render, and then you have to direct all the lights and apply materials and like all of these very, very intentional processes. This was just the only way.
Yeah.
And we are kind of a little bit resistant to challenging this, because we also spend so much time getting good at this. But we are slowly finding out that there's so much along there's certain things that will have to that I don't think AI is going to touch. But there are a lot of things where the tolerance is bigger than we thought. And it's not only that the tolerance is bigger, there's actually this other vector where there is value in the things that AI has to offer because of what it is. And it's not just about how do we make this as much exactly as we want as possible. So it's an exciting journey for me as a PhD researcher and as an architect and as a human. And I'm especially excited to do it with you guys.
I mean, this was extremely insightful. Like, thank you so much for like sharing all these thoughts. I feel like any architect that is right now, that are going to listen to this podcast are going to be like very amazed by like the work and explorations that you've done. So yeah, thank you so much.
Thank you for the invite. I hope I didn't offend any architect who's going to listen to this.
Yeah,
I'm not the most experienced architect, but I've been around.
You've been definitely getting deep into this particular topic. So I'm sure that at the very least, like in one way or another, and also like disagreements are great. Like if people want to disagree, that's always welcome. I don't feel like you've been saying things in a kind of like super strong way, or like with like extremely strong beliefs. It's more like, look, I was at Henning Larsen, we did this, we did that, this is what we found out.
I also I support being challenged. Like I kind of like that. I think that if you're not challenged, you can really develop.
Yeah.
So if anyone disagrees, please reach out and let me know. Let's debate and let's both get smarter.
Amazing. Cool.